Good morning. My name is Jennifer Whiteside. I am BC's Minister of Education. I am grateful to be with you here today from the territory of the Lekwungen-speaking people of the Songhees and Esquimalt nations. And I'm very pleased to be joined by Dr. Bonnie Henry and Stephanie Higginson, President of the British Columbia School Trustees Association. Today, we are announcing the enhancement of our health and safety guidelines for K-12 schools. This is part of our ongoing work to keep schools safe for students and staff. But before I begin, I would like to recognize the incredibly hard work being done throughout our province to support student learning. I've seen how this pandemic has turned the lives of British Columbians upside down. This year, all of us have faced obstacles really like never before. And throughout these many months, the people working in our schools, the teachers, the support staff, the school leaders, people in our Indigenous communities, parents and trustees have faced all of these challenges with such determination and compassion by keeping students and their health and well-being top of mind every single day. Schools are at the heart of our neighborhoods and communities, and they are the best places for students to learn and develop their abilities, their knowledge, their skills. There simply is no substitute for in-class learning. The BC CDC report in September 2020 told us that the suspension of learning in March and April had a profound and dislocating impact on the lives of many students. That's why it was a priority for our government to make sure schools could open in September with strict health and safety guidelines in place. And thanks to the hard work of education professionals, the vast majority of our students are attending school and receiving full-time, face-to-face instruction. Attendance rates for both staff and students have been consistently high throughout the first 5 months of the school year. And I've heard from many families that it means a lot for their children to join their friends and teachers in the classroom. And that's why keeping schools safe and open remains a priority for our government. We know that schools mirror what's happening in our communities. And while that means we've experienced exposures in schools, we are still seeing low transmission rates inside schools. This tells us that our health and safety guidelines that we have in place for schools are working well. And as the pandemic continues to evolve, and as we learn more about its behavior, our school guidelines must evolve as well. Throughout these challenging times, we have been meeting with our education partners, with rights holders, and provincial health officials regularly through our provincial steering committee. And since September, we've learned from our experiences, and we've worked collaboratively on how we can adapt. And as a result of all of this work, we are strengthening and updating our K-12 health and safety measures. Under the current guidelines, middle and secondary schools, as well as all K-12 staff, are required to wear non-medical masks when they are in areas of the school where interaction is not controlled, such as hallways, the library or lunchroom, or when they're on buses, or any time when they are not with their learning group. Our updated guidelines will now require all middle and secondary school students, as well as all staff throughout K-12, to wear their non-medical mask in all indoor areas of the school, including when they are in their learning group. The only exception to this is when they are sitting or standing at their seat or workstation in a classroom, where there is a barrier in place, or where they are eating, when they are eating or drinking. For elementary students, wearing masks while at school remains a personal choice for students and their families. It is critical to remember that masks do not prevent the spread of COVID-19 on their own. We still very much need the other layers of protection. We need to ensure students and staff continue to follow safety guidelines, including, very importantly, not coming to school sick, even with mild symptoms, washing your hands diligently, following all of the safety protocols in our schools and in our communities. We are also strengthening our guidelines for physical education and music classes. High-intensity physical activities should be held outside whenever possible. Shared equipment or items like weight machines, treadmills, or musical instruments can only be used if they are cleaned between use according to strict school sanitation guidelines. Students using equipment or playing instruments should also be spaced at least 2 meters apart, and masks are to be worn while singing. We must ensure our K-12 protocols are being applied consistently. And we also want to make sure students, their families, and staff feel confident with the safety measures in place. And that's why we're making these updates. I now just want to say a word about funding. In order to continue to support our safety plans, we are investing the second installment of $121.2 million in federal funding, which will allow schools and districts to continue to support students and staff until the end of the school year. To date, we've invested $288 million in federal and provincial funding, which has made a tremendous difference for students and staff. School districts and independent schools have used this funding to hire more staff when needed, to purchase masks and cleaning supplies and other personal protective equipment, to support remote learning, to improve ventilation and air quality systems. I do want to take a moment to address students directly. I know the pandemic has been very difficult for you. You've missed out on time with friends, time engaging in activities that you like, and everything about our COVID world really just feels different for everybody. And for older students, we recognize that this is not how you had envisioned spending your final school years. Your generation will be fundamentally shaped by the experience you're going through right now, and it is, frankly, unlike anything experienced by previous generations. But I do want to say, I think you've been amazing. And I want to encourage you to hang in there and keep taking it day by day, and we will get through this. In the meantime, we are committed to working together to continuously review and consistently apply our health and safety guidelines. And I do really want to express our deep gratitude to parents and families, students and staff, our education partners, and public health leaders. Our work is making a significant difference, keeping students safely in schools where their learning and well-being is supported. And I also just want to take a moment to recognize the excellent work that childcare providers are doing every single day to keep families and their staff safe. And there will be more detailed guidance available in this area next week as part of the BC CDC's updated childcare guidelines. And with that, I'd now like to introduce BC's Provincial Health Officer, Dr. Bonnie Henry.
Thank you very much and good morning. As I don't need to say, COVID-19 has proven to be a challenging foe for all of us, and our education system has experienced this at all levels. We know that in-class learning, however, and the opportunity for students to be in school is so important, not just for their education, but also for mental, physical, and emotional wellness. It is such an important part of growth and development for our young people, and we have put an important emphasis on that. And we know from the surveys that we've done that it was very disruptive, not just for students, but for families and for educators when school in-person classes were not happening. And these can have lasting effects throughout a lifespan. Having said that, I am so proud of the educators, administrators, and staff who've done an amazing job at making this a safe and important learning experience for students across the province. Since the start of the school year, we've paid close attention to our schools, and we've learned a lot, including the importance of having these robust safety plans and using the layers of protection that are built into these plans. We have seen exposures in our schools, and we have reported on those exposures. But we need to remember that these are reflections of what's happening in our communities. And we've followed these and monitored them very carefully, and we've had very little spread within the school setting, particularly within the classrooms. And that is a testament to how safe these are being made by everybody in the school community. Recently, we've had concerning exposures of people who have been infected with variants of concern, and including one in a high school in the Fraser Health region yesterday. And again, the results of the testing that we did out of caution to ensure that we were picking up any transmission showed us that the safety plans that were in place in that school worked, and we have had nobody who was had transmitted from that person. Schools are a reflection of our communities. So I anticipate, as we continue to have spread in our communities, we will continue to experience exposures. And that's why it is so important for us to update and reinforce the importance of these plans and these guidelines. So through the work of the Provincial Education Steering Committee and Minister Whiteside has outlined, we are updating the guidelines and procedures for the schools. It includes continuing our layers of protection and reinforcing the importance of these within each school system. We've also established response teams for each of our health authorities to work more closely with public health to support schools on an individual basis when exposure events happen. We've updated checklists and requirements for the school safety plans have been developed so that every school is consistently following these public health guidance. We've learned that when these safety plans are relaxed or provisions are made for some of the higher risk activities, for example, that can increase the risk of transmission. As Minister Whiteside has also mentioned, the mask requirements for middle schools and high schools have also been amended to more closely align with other places in our community. As we know, masks by themselves are not the answer. They won't by themselves stop the spread of COVID, but combined with our other layers, it can make a difference. These are similar approaches to the requirements we have in offices or in restaurants, where you wear a mask when you're moving about, but not when you're seated at a table. The same applies now to our schools, and when students and educators are at their desks or workstations, they may remove their masks. But when moving about or in the broader school, masks must be worn. Similarly, we've put in guidelines to reduce the potential for transmission when doing some of the higher risk activities that have led to some of the transmission that we have seen, including physical activities, playing instruments or singing, and other activities. I am incredibly proud of how our community has come together to support in-class learning for students across this province. From the very beginning, it has been so important to help our communities get through this crisis. Today's announcement is another step in that. And the focus on the needs of children and families will continue. And I want to thank all of our educators, parents, and students for continuing to do your part as we move through this pandemic phase. Thank you, and I'd like to introduce the BCSTA President, Stephanie Higginson.
It's a bit of a dance doing all this, eh? I'dsquel, Aikwana Silam Nala, Entapa Stephanie Higginson, Tlahitsanas Nonemo. I've just provided you with a traditional Hulkaminum greeting, which is a language of the lands upon which my own school district, the Nanaimo Ladysmith Public Schools, is situated. I also want to acknowledge that I am grateful to be on the territories of the Lekwungen-speaking peoples of the Esquimalt and the Songhees First Nations. I too would like to begin by expressing my gratitude for the hard work being done by every member of the education community in creating opportunities for students across British Columbia to continue their education throughout this pandemic. This includes the monumental efforts to create and implement safe, full-time, face-to-face instruction, as well as establishing various remote and hybrid learning opportunities and continuity of learning for students unable to be at school. It's really actually monumental what's happened in this school year. This gratitude is not limited to those only employed in the sector, but includes the families and the students who are working so hard to understand and comply with the robust health and safety measures that are in place in school. I also want to thank the numerous agencies and ministries that have supported the education sector in this important task. Most importantly, the Provincial Health Office. We could not do this without their expertise and their knowledge. Today, Minister Whiteside and Dr. Henry have outlined several changes to the K-12 health and safety guidelines under which schools will have and will continue to operate safely. These updates are comprehensive. They reflect what we have learned about operating schools during this pandemic, as well as what we continue to learn about this virus. They are based on up-to-date science. These updates have undergone a thorough consultation and collaboration across key education rights holders, stakeholders, and partners. The Provincial Steering Committee has over 40 voices participating on it. Committee members who have spent hours together discussing issues, establishing the path forward for how schools will operate. The updates being presented today reflect the collective desire of the Steering Committee members to have as many students in school for as much time as is safely possible during the pandemic. Prioritizing the social, emotional, and educational needs of the young people of this province is something each and every British Columbian should be proud of. This must continue to be a priority for us all throughout the course of this pandemic. Boards of education thank every British Columbian for the efforts that they are making in their own personal lives to prioritize the education of students. As the exhaustion of living during these difficult times sets deep into our bones and our hearts, I have noticed a heightened sense of divisiveness in the way people are expressing their concern about school safety. And this is not about developing thick skin as public figures or as earning a salary as a senior district leader. It is about decency and it is about kindness. For the sake of the students who are watching, we must refocus this energy on the important tasks that we have at hand. Boards of education are listening to their communities and being thoughtful during this complex time. Working together constructively to ensure schools are safe. This is our collective North Star and will remain so for the approximately 90 school days remaining in this school year. This work is important, this work is making a difference, and we must remain focused on the critical task ahead of us. Thank you.